Hey everyone, welcome back to Berlin Noir. Today we're going to be working close to where we were last week on a sunken garden in what was once the Louisianstadt Canal. That's this little part here that we're zooming in on, and here you can see I included both modern day and back then. But on the right picture, you can see that kind of whiter part that kind of splits the picture in half. That was once the canal, and during this time period, so actually between 1926 and 1932, it was filled in and turned into a garden and a little bit of a park. And yeah, so this is something that I wanted to do just because it's a really nice way to kind of segment this part of the city, because it splits Kreuzberg like kind of right in half in this part of the city. So it's kind of a nice divider to kind of build up to this point. So just, to make things look nice and have a kind of dividing point so you can kind of section off part of the city and, build in steps as I like to do. But also just because it's a really nice addition, I think, to add some greenery and a nice garden that's going to go right down the center of this area and just kind of add something unique to the city. Because when I was looking at this area, looking up some of the history and such, and photos and whatnot, I was wondering why they would have turned what was seemingly a nice canal, and fill it in, take all that time and effort to fill it in and turn it into a park. And the only thing I could think of was must have brought in some nasty bugs, mosquitoes, stuff like that. And I guess sure enough, that does seem to have been what was the problem. From what I read, that for one, that never really was a popular canal. It never had a lot of boat traffic, anything like that, so it didn't really serve its purpose in that way. But what really made it, or made people want to fill it in, was the fact that I guess the water level became quite low at times, and as such, the water became stagnant. So you just had a bunch of unmoving water, I'm sure with a very unpleasant smell at times. And of course, that's going to bring in bugs and mosquitoes and stuff like that. So it turns what is a nice area, what was meant to be a really nice, canal with waterway and, trees lining it, what was supposed to be really nice, turned into something I imagine wasn't so pleasant at times of the year. So based on the aerial view, it looks as though at this time period, 1929, the canal was completely filled in, and obviously it wouldn't take a whole lot of time just filling it in with dirt. But I couldn't really find a whole lot of pictures of like the stages, since according to Wikipedia it lasted all until 1932. I imagine most of that time was, of course, converting it into a garden, making it look nice, planting out the paths, all the different plants, whatever it may be. So what I decided to do was kind of break up, the different parts of this garden. And here at the south side of what was once the canal, we're at the entrance of the Landwehr Canal. I decided to make it look like it was more in the process of filling in. So what I'm doing right here is just kind of adding like a little dam type thing. That would have been temporary, of course, just to put there to block the water so they can start filling in on one side or whatever, or so they can work safely on the one side. But as you see, I used a lot more mud and decals for that, making it look more dirty, a little more wet, and more in the process of being filled in, and not really close to being converted into any sort of garden or park quite yet. So like I said, I just kind of want to have some sort of variation going on, and part of that was because I wasn't really sure exactly what the garden looked like around or through this entire area. I couldn't really find any pictures. I have a couple. I'll show one. Actually, no, that was prior to it being filled in. So yeah, I actually don't believe I had any pictures really, at least from a distance. They had some close-ups, which don't do a whole lot of good seeing what's going on. But yeah, I couldn't find anything that showed what the garden looked like or anything. The only thing that I did see was After the Berlin Wall fell, and the city was and the country was united in the early '90s, they actually made an effort to recreate the garden and like how it was during this time when it was created for the first time. So I actually just kind of use the modern day Google Earth for where there was a nice garden area. So closer to the Engelbecken, the reflecting pool, which we'll get to a little later in the episode. So like I said, I kind of copied modern day since it would seem as though that is modern day and back then is more or less the same. But for the other areas, it didn't really look like a completed garden or didn't really have a vibe that would be similar to something in the 20s. I wasn't really sure, so I just, like I said, parts of it I made my own garden, did whatever I wanted, but then other parts, like we did a second ago, I just kind of made it more under construction. And this area now that we're doing here is kind of going to be the transition from the filling in construction type thing to the actual garden. So first, of course, I had to lay all of the keys, which took time, but they were surprisingly, I guess I could say, well behaved, which I guess is a little weird to say of keys, but I hate working with keys. Even with all the mods like Anarchy for it, they just, I don't know, they just don't really work well, especially when you're not building along water. So when you don't have water, such as in this case, the game has a little bit of trouble sometimes recognizing which way the wall is supposed to be oriented, basically. And up until this point, actually didn't really have much of a problem with it, surprisingly. Using the creator content pack or whatever it's called with, I think it's bridges and piers, I think it's called. Which they're nice keys for sure. So maybe that's part of it. But later on, I did have some issues, and I cut all that out because it was getting really annoying, to say the least. But anyways, moving on. Now we are further down the canal and at the Engelbecken. So that is the Angel's Pool, this reflecting pool here that they retained just kind of as a nod to what it used to be, right? So they didn't fill in, I guess, the entirety of the canal with water. Or, sorry, canal with dirt. But, yeah, I think it's a really nice part. This is probably, honestly, the nicest part of it. And I did show the modern picture, since I believe that is how it was back then, pretty much completely. Here is a picture that I wanted to include of the canal before it was ever filled in. So I think this is 1906, if I'm not mistaken. Just very nice, right? The canal going down with all the little low bridges hanging over looks very nice. But even in that picture, you could see what looked like kind of some scummy stuff and maybe garbage collecting at parts of the river. So you can see that it's kind of standing there, right? It's not really flowing. So you can definitely imagine how that was a problem and why the people in the city had to get rid of it, unfortunately. But yeah, so for this part here, so the reflecting pool, I wanted to make it look nice, basically. I wanted to make it, quite detailed, highly detailed, maybe take a little more time than maybe I normally would have. So there was that. So you have the normal street layer key, right, along with the street where the people would be walking. And then you have those kind of ramps going down to the water level. And I wanted, again, to make this look pretty much as nice as possible, put a lot of time and effort to it. And I was wondering which way I should use to build the reflecting pool. So obviously I could fill it in with water, but it's shallow. I would have had to have made it deeper than this, obviously. But also, really, regardless of how shallow you make a body of water in this game, if you use the water, there's going to be waves. It's going to be bumbling about and just, I don't know, it wouldn't really make sense. And I don't think it looks right in a lot of times when you have what are supposed to be shallow pools with waves. So I just decided to use the water, I guess, surfaces, they're called. And in order to make it look more like water, you got to basically copy them and lower them just one by one. So that's what I did there. I think I copied it 5 or 6 times. So it goes from being rather see-through, transparent, and not very blue to being quite blue and actually looking more like a body of water. So I liked how it turned out there. So what I'm doing now is getting started on, I guess, more of the garden. So these are the pathways. I'm using coastal paths. They're supposed to be dirt, since I believe these were all dirt paths back then. I think they still are today. And what's also nice with these is they're various sizes. So typically paths are usually just the standard 4 meters in the game. But when I have the opportunity to, or I should say when I find a path that, is more than just 4 or 8 meters, such as this one that's 2 and 3 and 4 meters, that's a lot of nice variation. Yeah, it's not a very large difference, but it's certainly noticeable. And just adds to the realism and allows you to kind of fit in a little more space there with the smaller paths, which is nice. Another thing that I'd change in a second is with the kind of the path going around the reflecting pool. I have that stone, nice stone decal there. I do get rid of that. Since at first I was thinking to have it look stone, kind of make it look nice and such, but I don't think it was ever like that. Just like I said, the dirt path going around. So I eventually just get rid of that and just put the dirt path down. And I think it turned out nice. It definitely looks really nice. Some place I'd like to visit back then and today, since I think for the most part, like I said, it's retained a lot of kind of the feeling and the look and everything as it was back then. But so for there, I just put some small hedges, small bushes. I forget what the asset is called, but it's a prop. It's not an actual tree, so it's a little easier to place since with trees, as long as you have random tree rotation on, it's going to spin around. It's a lot harder to get more precise hedges, that type of look, which is what I was going for there. So I liked using those. I just used the plain green ones without flowers, which I don't know. I kind of think I wish I would have done the ones with flowers just to add a little more color. But yeah, it still goes, what I was looking for, more nicely trimmed, well manicured bushes, which of course these would have been only placed and growing for, I don't know, maybe a year most, probably not even that. So they were of course going to be pretty small. So that's one thing that in a second, while I was building, didn't really take into consideration. I added some more hedges right around here along these paths and this little water fountain here. I added a network. And right now I'm doing the network hedges, which are nice because they're network, so you can, make them to whatever shape and however long, much more easier than using prop hedges. But this is the shortest of the 2 hedges in that pack, and as you can see, it's pretty tall. And realistically, since like I said, this stuff would have been here for at most a year, most likely much, maybe 6 months realistically. So I mean, unless they happen to have planted really huge hedges, which I don't think they would have, it wasn't going to be these tall. So for the time being, I placed it down there. But when I exited out and came back in the save later on to continue working, I switched it out for shorter hedges, which even those are a little tall. I think I'm going to go, it's a little late now, I suppose, but I think I'm going to go back and even lower those in, because I was able to convert them to procedural objects, and since they're the non-conforming ones, you can lower them above and lower into ground, whatever you want to do. So I can make them a little shorter, which is something I'll definitely want to do. But yeah, so that's what I did there for that little garden there, trying to make it look nice. But yeah, so here we are on, this is kind of again what I said with the hedges being kind of a little tall. I don't think you can really notice here, especially since there's no people walking around. But in a little bit I add some pergolas, just some structure between the higher wall and the hedges, as I believe it was back then and also today. And when I do that, you can kind of notice that they're a little tall, because they should be basically short enough for people walking along there to be able to see into the pool, right? Not blocking their view or anything like that. But again, I mean, it's a small detail, I guess. Something that kind of bugged me since I didn't realize it at first. And even for the cinematics, I didn't fix it. So I guess it's more of a personal problem than really anything wrong with the build or anything like that. But anyways, moving on. So yeah, so what I'm doing here is, I guess you can see that I did get rid of those the tile decal to make it a little more natural, right, with the dirt paths continuing around, and then the hedges, and then just in those corner there, just adding some flowers. Once again, these are prop flowers, so I think it's tree and vehicle prop mod or something. Basically converts all vehicles and trees in game to props, which is really useful. I didn't expect it to be as useful as it turned out, but ever since I installed that mod a while back, it allows you to do some things that you otherwise wouldn't really be able to do, such as confirm to PO and make them a little smaller, have them fit in interesting shapes, stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely a pretty useful mod. But so yeah, here are the pergolas that I mentioned. So in modern day, they're not really pergolas that are here. It's kind of like a fence or a wire type structure that's similar to this, where you'd have vines and ivy growing. So I wanted to capture that in some way. So I just decided to use some wooden pergolas, since it has a little more less of a modern feel to it, and I think it looks nice. But I tried adding some, I think they're just ivy props, a flat ivy prop sitting on top of the pergolas, just to show a little bit of growth, because again, since this only would have been here for a pretty short amount of time, there wouldn't be a whole lot of growth yet. But I don't know, it looked a little weird, so I decided just to leave it without any sort of growth on there. And yeah, I think it turned out fine. But so here we are on to the other side of the reflecting pool, at least the other side from where we were just working. And this is, I guess, right next to the church, which would be at the bottom of the screen, now towards the top of the screen. But so for this part, I decided to keep the stone decals, since this is, I don't know if it's a restaurant, which is here. I'm not sure what the building would have been back then. Probably a restaurant or something like that. Or maybe something for the pool, some sort of pipes to keep water flowing, so it's not it itself doesn't become stagnant or anything like that. But there, I believe there was tables and stuff for people to come out to this nice area and have lunch, whatever. And it's still like this or similar to this today. So I added these little planters here along this side just to add a little more space. Because as I was placing those tables, it felt kind of close to the water, which even, I mean, when I looked at Google Maps and the street view and some of the pictures that people put on there, it seems as though it's right against the water. So, and I guess obviously you're not going to just fall in if you're paying attention, but yeah, like I said, it just kind of looked a little weird, so I wanted to add a little something there, and also adds a little more variation in shape, so it's not just a perfect squared edges or anything like that. But here I'm adding some bollards, just to again add some detail, add some variation, so it's not just kind of a plain waterfront. maybe this would have been left over from part of the canal. I'm not sure. Probably not. But you know, I wanted to make it look like you know, boats could have came up to here and maybe tied off. I did add a little rowboat. You know, maybe right now, just, you know, people could maybe rent the rowboat or whatever and just go out for a little drive, I guess. I don't really know what you call for a rowboat, a little row, I guess, just around the little pool here, and come back, right? But yeah, I think it turned out nice, this area here. I'm definitely happy how it looks and all. And on this side, just adding a little flower stand, and then I guess a little newspaper stand as well there. But so now we kind of took a break from the garden, you know, detailing all that. So now we're going to be finishing off the episode with that for basically the rest of the canal here, from where we started at the very start of the episode to what we just built, filling in that area there. So this is the area where I said that I didn't really find anything as far as what it looked like back then. And the area today doesn't look, like I said, doesn't look like it would have been like this back then. So it didn't have kind of the nice geometric shapes as that garden there on the left does. Doesn't look like it had the, you know, nice hedges and stuff. So I decided to kind of make up my own kind of garden here, throwing in different shapes and such. Right here, I'm, you know, making a little circle here to eventually fill with a little a water fountain, and just again trying to make it look nice and have just that kind of typical vibe of being very geometric, with different shapes and allowing space for hedges and stuff like that, since that was definitely the look of this time. And it's definitely I don't know, I definitely like that, how everything is really neatly cared for, compared to most things today. It really doesn't matter where you are in the world. Of course, you know, with time things become, you know, a little more overgrown, a little more let go, right? People stop taking care of stuff, especially, you know, community stuff, right? People trash it, whatever. You know, it's just, I guess, something of the modern times. It is what it is. But yeah, I wanted to make it look nice, so that's what I went with. I guess I took a little break once again from detailing that and moved to this part, because I do go back in a second and actually add the, you know, the flowers, the hedges, and all that type of stuff. But so this here is closer to where we started at the start of the episode. You can see there on the right, kind of that mud and stuff. So this is, again, I mentioned, kind of the transition point from the under construction, more so being currently filled in, that type of thing, to where the gardens are nicely planted and that type of thing. So I think I bounced back once again to where we were just a second ago. I don't know, I guess I was a little more going around like crazy, building these different areas, not so consistent as I usually am. But yeah, I think it was mostly just because it was taking a long time to do this. I was not expecting it, and as you can see, this is a 28-minute long episode, which I guess is a bit ironic considering in the previous episode I mentioned that I wanted to try shorter episodes, you know, closer to 15 minutes, but less than 20, which, I don't know, I guess I'm thinking more so now that I'm just going to do whatever it is. If I happen to build a little less, or something takes a little less longer to build, it happens to be a 15-minute episode, so be it. Or in our case today, if it happens to be over 25 minutes, you know, okay. I don't think I'm going to try to really make an effort to make videos closer to 15 minutes, since most of you still said that you like the longer videos. And no one actually said that they like shorter ones. So if that's what you guys like, you know, I'll stick to, you know, the longer videos, or like I said, you know, whatever it happens to be, it'll just be whatever length it is. But so yeah, I guess a little funny there. But yeah, so just continuing to detail now the gardens here, adding in all the nice plants and vegetation here that would have been recently planted, I imagine. So going for smaller stuff, Small trees right here, and then not a whole lot of growth, trying to make it look really nice and neat, because they probably even would have added plants and stuff over time. Maybe they wanted to see how stuff growed in, or see how stuff grew, how stuff filled in, right, and then added maybe some more plants and flowers over time, to make it look complete. But yeah, so now once again we're back to this area here, for I guess the final detailing here. I want to just add some more construction stuff, some like sandbags, and then here, I guess in a second I add I guess it was actually the transition period, or transition zone I should say, where I add some kind of garden props, right, to try and make it look like that's where they're beginning to add some plants and garden, which is going to be between the nicely decorated nice garden areas and then this area here, which is still kind of in the process of being filled in. Just adding some props here, I guess kind of like some junk. Perhaps this would have been, in the canal as they were draining it and filling it in. Maybe perhaps trying to salvage any of that type of thing. Not really sure. But just, again, trying to fill in space and make some sort of transition between the nice and the ugly. But yeah, I guess that's going to do it for this episode. As I said, we're going to finish the garden and then build the St. Michael and St. Thomas Church, which are nearby, in the next episode. So stay tuned for that, hopefully next week. And if you did enjoy today's episode, give it a thumbs up for sure. Help people find the channel, and I will see you all next time.